Hey, what's going on, good people? Armand Owens here with you once again, coming at you with the Daily Leadership Nugget every single day. Today is May 6th, and today we're going to be talking about a little thing called mental models. Mental models is a way that I learned a few years ago to make decisions pretty rapidly. Making decisions is kind of hard in this capacity, being in charge and dealing with dangerous situations, and when people's lives are in jeopardy, you have to be able to take the information that you got and make the most right decision. Always say, do not hesitate, make a decision, then make it right. But if you want to make the best possible decisions as a leader, I utilize a thing called mental models. Now, I stole this from Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger is the advisor to Berkshire Hathaway Investments. And he is the best friend of one of the most successful investors of all time. I'll let you take a guess who that is. But he talks about being able to take information from different areas, from different disciplines, from mathematics, from physics, from psychology, from biology, all these different principles, and being able to take their framework, their bottom line principles, and apply them to areas where they may not normally be applied. So I'll give you some of the mental models that I use. Number one, I use a mental model called Hanlon's Razor. That's Hanlon, Hanlon's Razor. Now, in philosophy, a razor, all that is a term used in philosophy that alludes to cutting away, removing all of the information that's not pertinent to a principle. So, Hanlon's Razor posits that you never, ever attribute malice to something that can easily be explained by ignorance. And here's how this looks for me. When a sailor or anybody that I have to lead, if I give them a task and they completely mess it up, I can choose to be upset at that person about how they performed, or I can look at myself and say, well, I'm not taking this personal. They didn't do it on purpose. Maybe I did not provide enough instruction, enough guidance, enough clarity, right? So you never assume maliciousness, to anything that people do. You give people the benefit of the doubt, even if they are out in town and they mess up and have a run-in with some law enforcement, whatever the case may be. I don't attribute that to maliciousness, that they're out here trying to do something wrong, because what ends up happening when you attribute maliciousness to something that can easily be explained, by ignorance, is that you end up taking it personally. You get your emotions involved, and once you get your emotions involved, in that scenario, it's hard for you to see clearly on what actually occurred. You respond in anger, you respond in frustration, and what really ended up being, hey, the person just didn't understand. They really didn't know. So you start out with that. It saves you a lot of stress as a leader. So Hanlon's Razor, look it up. The next one that I use is called the Circle of Competence. That's actually pretty simple. What ends up happening a lot of times as you grow as a leader, your ego starts to advise what you undertake. Well, I'm a master chief, so therefore I should be able to do blah, 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 blah. No, you still only know what you know. And the circle of competence is, all that is saying is that be honest about what you know. Be aware of what you know and be aware of what you don't know. And don't try to put yourself in scenarios or try to advise situations or try, to insert yourself into places that you have no business. Trust the people that are around you. Understand what your circle of competence is. This is what you know, and the circle outside of that is what you don't know. So know what you know and know what you don't know. And don't allow your ego to have you inserted into places where you have no business. The third one is the map is the territory. Now, the map is merely a representation of a specific place, time, or reality. That's all it is. So my representation of reality is not your or anybody else's representation of reality. My understanding of what I see, what I experience every single day, that's merely my map. That's merely my representation of what is actually happening. I have to understand that that is not all encompassing by any stretch of the matter. And as leaders, we got to understand that everybody else has a perspective that is important, that offers, that lends, to the greater whole. So the map is not the territory. And I'm going over these kind of fast, and I'll put a link in the comments for the complete list of mental models. These are the ones that I use the most often, but there are a ton of them. And it takes a minute to kind of get it into your normal repertoire of leadership, of awareness, and things of that nature. Next one I use is called inversion. Inversion is found in mathematics. It's essentially where you take a problem and flip it. We take the problem and flip it and look at it from a different perspective. One of the ways I use inversion the most is through a process called fear casting. So what I do is I look at, when I coming into work, going into an evolution, I'm looking at what is the worst that can happen here? What is the worst possible outcome that can occur? Then I work backwards on how we can mitigate those things, how we can prepare for those things, how we can put safeties in for those things. Also, it does something for me as a leader. It prepares me for that worst case scenario. So when it does show up, I'm not surprised. I don't panic. I don't get into my emotions. I'm ready to respond, to whatever the situation is. This is something actually that I've built into my normal morning routine, where I imagine some crazy out there scenario that can happen. My building catches on fire, or the submarine sinks, or whatever the case may be. Just really, really bad scenario, so that I'm prepared for that. It also works as well when sailors or people come up to me and say, hey CMC, you got a minute? I assume that they're about to give me the worst information in the world, so that I'm not surprised and I lose that sailor because of a facial expression, which I'm prone to do, that shows them that I'm judging them for the information that they give me. That's not in line with inversion, but it's just something that I do that helps with that. But inversion is just flipping a problem on its ear and looking at it from a different perspective. Also, for me, like I said, fear casting. And the last one that I use on a more often than not basis is called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor is actually pretty simple, because it just says the simpler explanation typically is more likely to be the right answer, more so than complicated ones. If I'm driving down the road and I see two cars, the car behind it is the fender is crashed in, and the trunk of the other car is smushed in. I don't assume that they hit an invisible dimension or barrier that wasn't there previously. It was just an accident. I know I just took it there a little bit, but sometimes we can get deep. Sometimes we can go too far with how we're generating ideas, how we're generating solutions. But a lot of times it's just the simplest answer typically works. Right? So those are just some of the mental models that I use. I use a lot more, but those are ones that are high up the list. Another one I use, a Roosevelt model. That is urgent, not important. Urgent but important. Important but not urgent. Not important, not urgent. Also, I'll put a link for that as well. And it's just how I determine how I establish my priorities throughout the day. Like I said, there are a ton of more mental models, and the more that you can have operating at the same time, interweaving, interlacing in and of themselves, the easier it becomes, to make decisions in any capacity. So, and one more thing about the circle of competence, for me as a leader, my circle of competence has changed based on how I've risen in the military. My circle of competence when I was a second class was solely around submarine electronics and submarine navigation. Now, if you start asking me about submarine electronics and submarine navigation, I can give you a little bit, but not a lot. Where now my circle of competence, is really, really about people, because that's the job. So, you got questions, please put them in the comments. This one was a little bit longer than I usually go, but these are concepts that are sometimes hard to flesh out, but we can talk more about it. I can do more videos about it, but if you got questions, please let me know. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. There's going to be a lot more. I'm taking these videos. I'm going to transcribe them to audio so that if you want to take them somewhere, I'm going to transcribe them into text as well. So that you have them in that way as well. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you. Have a good one.